Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be replumbing this vanity sink. There's a few code violations underneath which I'll bring in a little bit closer to explain, and then also replacing the mechanical waste pop-up as well. This one doesn't necessarily have to be replaced, but just in case you're starting from scratch, let's go through the complete walkthrough. So let's get started. Loosen off all the union connections on the sink to remove the trap and piping. I'll be using a set of adjustable pliers to remove the pop-up and drain assembly, and a plastic tubing cutter to cut out the remainder of the piping. The code violation is having more than one pipe diameter drop in slope between the trap and vent connection. I'll explain more about this later in the video. Clean up the old drain opening from any grime, silicone, or plumber's putty. To assemble your new pop-up drain, start with applying Teflon tape to the top portion of the drain body and a small bead of plumber's putty around the drain flange. Pass the drain body up through the drain opening and thread on the flange. Hand tight only. The threaded section here can be a very common place for a leak. Applying some Teflon tape to the highest point will fill the gaps of the threads and reduce the chance of a leak. Tighten down the nut to secure the drain body in place. Hand tight first and the remainder with an adjustable pliers. Make sure that the opening for the pivot rod is facing straight to the back of the cabinet. As you're tightening down the drain body, the plumber's putty will squeeze out around the flange, but can be easily cleaned up. Next is dropping in the stopper. Make sure the bottom part of the stopper with the hole in it is facing straight back towards the cabinet. The pivot rod passes through this hole and controls the upward and downward motion of the stopper. Tighten the pivot rod nut only by hand. If you're unable to remove the stopper, you'll know that it's installed correctly. Pass the lift rod through the back of the faucet. Underneath, pass the lift rod through the clevis or adjustment linkage. Squeeze the spring clip together and connect the adjustment linkage to the pivot rod, with the linkage in between the clip. The hole that it's installed on is based on the length of the linkages, but in most cases is going to work best on the second or third lowest hole. Align all the linkages to operate smoothly. The last step is tightening the clevis screw to the lift rod. I personally do this with the pop-up in the fully open position and slightly raise the lift rod before tightening the screw. This makes it easier to get your fingers under the lift rod to operate the pop-up. Alright, so I threw this together so we have a better understanding what's going on in the wall. Let's just start from the top here. So we have this is going to be where your tailpiece ties in at the bottom of the sink. This is an 1.25" to 1.5" trap adapter. This is your riser, which goes into a 1.5" union P-trap. Remember, this is designed to hold water so the sewer gas doesn't come back up through the sink. The connection between the P-trap and the vent is called the trap arm, and usually if an inspection is going to fail, it's going to be in this section. This has a minimum and maximum length. The minimum length the trap arm can be is 2 pipe diameters. 1.5 pipe times 2 is 3 inches. So this section between the trap and the vent has to be a minimum of 3 inches, and this helps stop siphoning out the trap seal. The maximum drop this trap arm can have is 1 pipe diameter. Since this is 1.5 piping, the maximum slope or drop you can have is 1.5 inches. 1/4 inch per foot is standard slope for 1.5, 2 inch, and 3 inch drainage. So the maximum length you could run this is 6 feet at 1/4 inch per foot slope. A great way to remember this is you take your pipe diameter, times it by 2, and then times it by 2 again. So 1.5 pipe times by 2 is 3, times by 2 is 6. 6 feet is the maximum length you can run this at 1/4 inch per foot. 2 inches is the same thing. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. 8 feet is the maximum length you can run at 1/4 inch per foot for 2 inch pipe. 1/4 inch per foot slope is roughly when the bubble on the level just touches the line. The reason for not having more than 1 pipe diameter drop is that the drainage won't have access to the air. So for whatever reason, if you were to install your drain like this would be greater than 1 pipe diameter drop between the P-trap and the vent. This line, where the drainage is, won't have access to the air, and it'll drain extremely slowly, but it also could potentially siphon out the trap seal. Here's an example of the importance of a properly vented drainage system. Venting is just as important as the drain, as it can cause slow drainage and drains that are more prone to blockages. Cutting the ABS or PVC can be done with a plastic handsaw, hacksaw, or plastic tubing cutters. It is important that the cut is straight so that the tubing has a maximum amount of contact with the fitting. Using a tubing cutter as shown will ensure an accurate, straight cut with no mess. Using the correct cement is very important. This is ABS tubing, so ABS cement should be used. PVC and PVC to ABS connections have different cements. Apply a thin, even coating to any part of the fitting and tubing which make contact with each other. Push together and turn slightly to ensure complete coverage. The cure time will depend on the cement, temperature, and humidity. Holding the fittings together for 2 to 3 seconds should be sufficient. Wipe away any excess cement. The first step I take in starting the drain is figuring out the height. This is because the height is some adjustment because the trap adapter can move up and down on the tailpiece. Get your rough height measurement as shown with the trap adapter roughly halfway between the tailpiece. This will give you the most flexibility in height adjustment. This is the part where most people will struggle, because the P-trap will most likely not line up with the drain coming from the wall. In the fortunate scenario that it does line up, adjust the angle of the P-trap to line up with the drain and use a coupling on the wall side. Measure your trap arm piece, cut, and connect. In the scenario where it doesn't line up, a 45 fitting will be needed. Mine is just enough off that I can use a street 45, which is a male by female fitting, instead of a standard female by female or hub by hub fitting. If your drain is far enough away, you'll have to use a hub by hub 45 with a piece of pipe in between. Don't feel bad about dry fitting your connections before gluing to get your angles right. The final connection should be tightening your union P-trap. Hand tight is usually sufficient for the union P-trap and trap adapter. Well guys, thanks for watching, and like always, if this video helped you out, liking, commenting, subscribing is always greatly appreciated. Till next time.